Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and this is officially the answer portion of my second ever Q&A on my YouTube channel. I got a lot of great questions from you guys, 20 in fact, so I'll be playing 20 questions. And before I get started with the first one, I'd like to say a shout of thanks to Senor Nerd and Pop Culture Diva 42, who both answered some questions I threw his way on one of his recent Q&As, and I found that really cool. They were discussing everything from Batman: The Long Halloween to Saga, and lots of really interesting stuff that I eventually want to look into myself. So really cool hearing from you guys about that stuff, and so hell yeah, let's get started. Now the first question is the only one to come from Facebook, and it's from my good friend Baz Taylor. First question is, are there any fandoms that you have not yet covered in any of your videos, and if so, will you be covering those? You know, there's a few things here and there that I've only covered peripherally. There's things like the game series Final Fantasy and Metal Gear Solid I've referenced a couple of times vaguely, sort of, and I've always wanted to go back and do sort of more in-depth, you know, remembrance videos and that kind of thing. There is a sort of Mexican pop group that spun off from a sort of, I guess you could say, soap opera TV series called Rebelde, and they were called RBD, that I'm a big fan of their music. I mean, I have a very eclectic musical taste, and I don't know, they harmonize really well when they're singing. Of course, they broke up, you know, and a few years ago they basically went their separate ways and everything like that, but to pursue other things creatively for their careers, and that's kind of a bum out. There's no more, you know, new music coming from them, but I just really got into them. I got into the show, and another series that I actually haven't ever discussed on my channel that I really enjoyed was iCarly. This was a Nickelodeon show, and I just happened to land on one of the episodes where essentially you have the older brother who was called Spencer on the show, and he was guardian to his little sister Carly. And basically you had the grandfather coming in and saying, you know, you're irresponsible, you can't take care of your little sister, and this kind of thing. And so he had to convince him by the end of this episode that he could. And this was my sister and I. I mean, you know, Spencer was an artist, I'm a writer / artist, and you had Carly, who's like the wacky little sister, and he was being her guardian. And so this was my sister and I having to fight to stay together after our parents died and everything. We both got into that show and really got a kick out of it because it was genuinely funny. It was, you know, kind of a kid's show, but it was written by people who have been in the industry for a long time, and so there was adult humor too. And it kind of bridged that gap. It's a show that I could see parents watching with their kids and getting a genuine kick out of it the way their kids might. And so, you know, the dilemma I always have is, how much more am I going to really say on it than that? I mean, how much more can I really relate about it than why I enjoyed it? These are things that, I mean, you know, Archie comics, talking more in depth about anime series I love like Ghost in the Shell or Cowboy Bebop. These are things that I don't necessarily know if I can, you know, contribute anything that hasn't already been said before, or that I won't be able to say something just very basic, what it means to me and that kind of thing. And, you know, I don't know. I don't necessarily feel like I want to waste people's time on a whole video discussing these things when I'm really not sure that what I'm saying is original. So it's kind of like, yes, I would like to eventually do videos on all of these things at some point, but there's a lot of, you know, in the heat of the moment passion when I make videos. I kind of go into it and I'm just very passionate about it. It's something I'm really inspired to do. And I don't know, I don't really feel the interest in doing these videos unless that passion is there, that inspiration is there, and prompting is there to jump right into it. If I don't have that all the way through it, if I don't have that from the idea stage of making a video and discussing, you know, stuff that I love, then I really just kind of don't. I mean, that's why I haven't mentioned these things before. I don't know much that I could say about them, other than just, you know, hey, check this out. It's cool. I love it, you know. So that's kind of why there are things that I haven't mentioned on my channel, and as to whether I will or not, time will have to tell. Now, Baz's second question is, what is your proudest possession of all the memorabilia and things you have collected? There are several things that I have that, you always hear the worst case scenario. If your house was burning down, what would you grab? And the first thing I would grab is my sort of plush stuffed penguin that I got as a gift from my sister a long time ago. One of the last times we could actually get out of the house and out of town before our car broke down, she surprised me with this penguin, life-size penguin, and that's because I love penguins. And it was a genuine surprise. We had a little money left over. That's very rare at this point. And she just, for lack of being able to get me a Christmas gift or birthday gift, this was a couple of years ago, she just surprised me with it, and I absolutely love it. I call him Pen Pen. He sits by my bedside. Now, as far as prized possessions collectible-wise, the number one has to be the one I've spent the most money on, and that is a giant import, they call it a VMF action figure of Motoko Kusanagi from Ghost in the Shell standalone complex. This is a character that really resonates with me in a series that I just absolutely love. It was one of the first ones I started watching. And so I knew I had to have a figure of this character, no matter what medium I, see this character, whether it be in books or in the anime or in a movie. There's just something about the character that speaks to me. It's not just the look of the character, because of course, you can have characters that have attractive values look-wise, but there's like a mentality behind the character that speaks to me and resonates with me. And in the same manner, speaking how Captain James T. Kirk might. I have a Kirk figure I love, or Superman might. I have a Superman, several Superman figures actually, but I spent $100 on this because it was an import when it came out, and it has to be a top tier. I haven't even brought it out of the package. I just have it on display still in the package. I did open it once, but it's, staying in the package just for safety's sake. And of course, speaking of Star Trek, I have several versions of, like, toy versions of the Starship Enterprise and collectible versions, stuff like that, various sizes. But I have this one that is basically the same size as you might buy as a scale model, and it actually kind of looks like a model I put together. It was one of the first ever toy versions that I know of, at least in late 80s, early 90s, put out, and I plunked down like $40 on it or something like that at the time, and it's survived 2 moves with me, and I love it. I still love it to this day. It's my favorite version of the Enterprise, the 60s classic TOS version, and frankly, it's one of those things where I don't want to ever part with it. I love that Enterprise. It means more to me than just a ship and the series. It's also nostalgia value because it's like the one big connection I have with my dad, who, as I've said, I lost early in life. So that's how Star Trek impacts me, and this ship impacts me. And so thank you, Baz, for your questions. Let's move on to the rest of these, which are all from YouTube, and we'll be starting with Will Spider 5. So his first question is, what's your thoughts on the increasing population of American shows that are rip-offs of British ones, i.e. Sherlock and Elementary? And it's kind of a funny question because it does annoy me. Especially when they're in such close proximity, like Sherlock and Elementary. It's blatantly obvious this is just a cash grab rip-off concept. But the thing is, this has been going on for decades. Think back to, I can't remember the original British show title, but eventually we got a series called Three's Company, which starred John Ritter, and I absolutely was a big fan of John Ritter as a kid. He was like, slapstick comedy, that kind of thing, goofball. He and Robin Williams on Mork and Mindy, these were two, aside from Three Stooges and Laurel and Hardy, these were 2 comedians that really spoke to me, and I loved Three's Company growing up. Of course, I didn't get all the innuendo jokes until I was much older, but this show was based on, I think it was like Lad About the House or something like that. It was called, a sitcom over in the UK. And so this has been going on for a very long time. I don't always really have too much of an issue with it, except when it kind of interferes or interplays against the British show that it's based on, like, again, referencing Elementary versus Sherlock. It just kind of seems to me to be pointless and sort of disrespectful in a way, I guess you could say, but it's also just a matter of business. These things happen because people, these studios need to make money, and yes, it is a pain in the ass, yes, it is stupid, especially when you have a show like Elementary, and I'm hearing not too many good things about it, so it's kind of like, what was the point? Why are you doing this other than just trying to cash grab in on the same kind of viewership you're hoping to get, and you're not even producing something of similar quality, so I try not to sweat it too much. But it can be annoying and frustrating. Now, the second question from Little Spider5 is, what are your thoughts on the Miles Morales character being Spider-Man in the Ultimate Universe? No problem with it whatsoever, frankly. I haven't been reading Marvel for a long time, and I don't know if I'm going to start, anytime soon. I've been tempted to with the sort of fall of Peter Parker and beginning of Superior Spider-Man, but, I've heard Miles Morales is somewhat of a fan favorite for people. I mean, people are liking him more than disliking him. Definitely liking him more than Doc Ock being Spider-Man. And I think it's cool. I mean, it's the Ultimate Universe, so it's kind of like what DC did with their Elseworlds stuff. I always dug Elseworlds stories, and Superman Red Sun is kind of Elseworlds, where he landed in Soviet Russia and everything. I like these explorations and sort of switch-ups of characters from time to time, as long as it doesn't mess with the overall legacy of a character. I mean, we've had Superwoman, we've had a female Superman, I think it was like a Wonder Woman mashup maybe with the character, I can't remember exactly, but the point is, we've had things like that, and as long as they always go back to the original thing, same going with the Doc Ock situation, as long as Peter Parker comes back, it's not really an issue for me. All of these other versions of Spider-Man we've seen, Scarlet Spider and stuff like that, I am intrigued by it because I like to see things breaking the mold. I like to see things going in a direction we may have not seen before. And with the Miles Morales character, I think it was a win-win situation. They brought on this character. People started to get into him and dig him. And, so, okay, he's Ultimate Spider-Man. Rock on. I love it. And, so thank you, Will Spider, for your two questions. Moving on from there, we have two questions from Super Welsh 93. The first of which is, if you were in an anime, which studio/artist would you want to draw you? This is an awesome question. I've fantasized about this kind of stuff on and off, from comics to anime. I would love to see versions of myself. I think we all would. Inherently there's a part of us that would be like, what would we look like if we were in that comic book, or what would we look like if we were in an anime? And the first thing that comes to mind for me is hands down Cowboy Bebop. The studio of which produced it was Sunrise, and of course the show creator Shinichiro Watanabe, but the character designer on that was a cat called Toshihiro Kawamoto, and he later co-founded Studio Bones. He has worked on not only Cowboy Bebop, doing the character designs of like Spike Spiegel and Jet Black and all of that, but he's also gone on to do character designs on Eureka 7 and Witch Hunter Robin, another couple of series I love. So I would love to see this guy's take on, the Blues Man, essentially. Now, aside from that, another thing that occurred to me was going back to Final Fantasy VII. I know they're not technically anime related, but the character designer of Final Fantasy VII, Tetsuya Nomura, he was actually highly inspired in his character designs for Final Fantasy VII of Cloud Strife, Sephiroth, Aerith Gainsborough, Barrett Wallace, all these characters, Tifa Lockhart, when he created those character designs for that game. And I have to point out, it was the first time they didn't go with Yoshitaka Amano, who is someone else I would love to see a character concept of myself of. But Tetsuya Nomura, he was really highly inspired by anime, creating those characters for Final Fantasy VII. He has a very, stylized look. I think he also did the character designs of Squall Leonhardt and all of those characters from Final Fantasy VIII as well. And I just always kind of dug the look of them. I love that really old school anime sort of, look to them. And I always thought that would be really cool to see yourself done up by that kind of an artist. Would be just amazing. Now, Super Welsh 93's second question is, what is your favorite anime and why? And I've pretty much talked about the top two, in these previous questions, Cowboy Bebop and Ghost in the Shell standalone complex. Why are they my favorite series? Not least of which would be that they were my first two, essentially, after playing Final Fantasy VII. That really spoke to me, and when I realized those characters were designed to look like anime characters, I just broke beyond this ignorance that I had of anime and Japanese culture. And when I started watching Ghost in the Shell and Cowboy Bebop, I just really got into these series. They were well plotted. They were very deep and resonating story-wise. Bebop had a lot more comedy elements and sort of things I could relate to, not having a lot of wealth and things like that, always being broke. At times, it can bring you to tears when you find out about Faye Valentine's history in Cowboy Bebop and her sort of amnesia and all of that stuff. It can bring you on the verge of tears, but then at the same time, you can see her and Spike, having it out, basically arguing with each other over a thing of noodles, and you're just laughing your butt off, And it's the same thing with Ghost in the Shell. There are comedic moments, but this one was definitely a very cerebral series, and it was the first time where I'm watching what is essentially animation, and it's like a very complex series about government intrigue and espionage and hacking and computer systems and cybernetics, and it's just, top of the line stuff entertainment-wise. So these are hands down my two favorite series. Thank you very much, Super Welsh 93, and we'll be moving on to two questions from the Comics Kid 2099. And so question number one is favorite superhero, and this is quite possibly the easiest one I'm going to be answering today. That is Superman, the last son of Krypton, Kal-El, the Man of Steel, the Man of Tomorrow. I absolutely love this character. He's my all-time favorite character. Basically, it all goes back to him. I mean, I love Batman, Aquaman, Wonder Woman, Flash. I love Spider-Man. I love, the X-Men and the Avengers, all of these other characters, but Superman is where it's at. Superman is where it always goes back to, not least of which because he is, in effect, the archetype of the modern comic book superhero. I mean, he was the first back in 1938 to put on the cape and the tights and be, he wasn't flying around yet, as we know, but he was pretty much strong as hell and, jumping up on giant buildings and stuff like that in a single bound and all of that. And, he is the end-all, be-all for me. It's something about his character. I mean, I haven't read a lot of him, I'll be honest, but it's something about his character's honor and selflessness and majesty. It sort of resonates with me similarly to how the 7 virtues of Bushido, the Japanese sort of mentality of love, honor, loyalty, respect, selflessness, compassion, all of these things are embodied in this one character. And I don't care if people say he's too powerful, people say Batman is more realistic. Well, you know what? Bite me is another BM for you. As far as I'm concerned, Superman is where it's at, and he will always be my end-all, be-all favorite superhero. The second question from Comics Kid 2099 is least favorite superhero. Now, this is going to be the hardest one for me to answer all day because I can't really think of any off the top of my head as far as superheroes I dislike or don't necessarily want to read. I mean, I could basically react to it better if there was like a list of them. One thing I will say, the Marvel movies, Guardians of the Galaxy, seriously? I mean, when you could be making a movie about, like, say, Captain Marvel or Miss Marvel, whatever you want to call her, I don't know. Guardians of the Galaxy sounds ridiculous. I read up on Wikipedia a little bit of it. I'd never heard of it prior to the release of information that they were making a movie based on this. And, I mean, yeah, there's wackier stuff out there, but, I mean, short of an ambush bug movie, which is something I desperately want to see, Guardians of the Galaxy just seems like a weird concept. And how is this going to fit? This seems like the odd piece out in the puzzle of the Marvel movie franchises. Maybe that's just me. Maybe they're going to do something spectacular with it, but as soon as I heard it and as soon as I delved into it a little deeper, it was just kind of like WTF. So I don't necessarily say it would be my least favorite, but it's definitely one I'd be going into going, head scratching, like, why did they make this? Why are they making this? And yeah, so that's it from Comics Kid 2099. Thank you for your questions. Moving on to two questions from Fog Dark. First question is, do you follow any of the more popular manga, i.e. One Piece, Naruto, Bleach, or even Dragon Ball, or any of the others that have a big following? Quite frankly, not really. I'm not that big of a manga reader, to be honest, and with these particular series, I'm not going to knock them in any way because I haven't really watched them, but I've had no desire to watch them because they are so uber popular. I tend to stray from things that are, Sword Art Online was kind of a fluke that it turned out to be as popular as it was, and I got into it. But as far as manga goes, I mean, it's nothing against that particular medium. I love comic books. I do love the manga that I have read, and most of the time it's like tie-ins to anime series and stuff like that. But the fact of the matter is, I don't have a internet connection that's computer-based, so I can't really access these websites that have these manga chapters that are released every month very easily. And at the same time, I'm also broke as hell, and I can't really get to my local bookstore to read and finger through the latest issues of mangas, which are probably 6 months old to begin with. So it's really not easy for me to follow manga, even if I wanted to. And it's just rare that I find one that I have interest in. So basically, no, I don't follow any of those. Dragon Ball is probably the closest to any of the ones you listed that I've gotten into vaguely. I was watching the series sort of early on into my getting into anime, and I was definitely intrigued by it from the start, but it just started to really sort of droll on and on and on. And again, not trying to diss Dragon Ball in any way, shape, or form, but it just got to the point where it was like, is there a point? So I kind of lost interest with that, although I do still dig the characters. The second question from Fog Dark is, which do you prefer in general, long-running series or short ones? And I would have to say probably longer ones. I probably prefer longer ones, although in the last year, in sort of getting back to anime after a few years of not having watched a lot of it, the series I've reviewed on my channel, like Kids on the Slope and Natsuke Rendezvous and Kokoro Connect, these are all moderately short series that have actually been very impactful and very well done. So I think the question for me has always been, is a short series going to be able to do something, affect me in a way that a long series like Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex or Cowboy Bebop, the aforementioned, which are all somewhat longer series. I mean, Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex has 2 full 26-episode series, and to me, that's a lot of impactful storytelling there in many different formats, from the single episodes to the overall story arc. When you have these shorter series that are capable of doing that, it's pretty awesome, and I haven't been used to that. I haven't seen that before until recently, so I guess it depends really on the effectiveness of the series itself. If it can tell its story and be impactful in a short amount of time, then boom, I'm down for it. But usually, at least to me, it's taken longer series to get there. So I guess I would say longer series over shorter, depending on the series. So thank you, Fog Dark, for your 2 questions.